Okay, thank you for joining me again. The Gemara is a rather strange one. We started doing a section towards the end of last week, and we were looking at maps and we were looking at the names of the sons of Noah and his descendants and how they spread across the globe. And the Gemara continues a little bit in this phase, which is not clear because we don't have a clear record of what some of the names are. And there's plenty of discussion and disagreement on where even various countries and cities were situated. But that's the topic of the Gemara, and we'll carry it in forward today. Just to let you know how we got to this Gemara that talks about the sons of Noah and the countries in the world. Originally, of course, our Masechta started with the discussion of the Kohen Gadol, who's placed into isolation for 7 days before Yom Kippurim. And during those 7 days, he's briefed about the order of service on Yom Kippur, which he carries out on his own. He's prevented from becoming Tomei, and he remains in this little housing unit within the Azora of the Beis Hamikdash for that 7-day period. And the Gemara went on to tangents, and the first tangent took us to a discussion of the various Kohanim Gedolim through the first and second temple period, that some of them were good, some of them were wicked, some of them were corrupt. The Gemara discussed that period very, very honestly and frankly. And then in discussing the Kohanim Gedolim who were corrupted, went on to talk about the destructions of the two Batei Mikdash and what brought about those destructions. The first Beis HaMikdash on account of the transgression of the cardinal sins, as we know, and the second Beis HaMikdash, and this is still obviously very topical, because of Sinat Chinam, and we haven't seen the Beis HaMikdash rebuilt since that time, 2,000 years. The Aveira of Sinat Chinam still remains as a stain and still lurks, and as we've discussed, is in some ways possibly the precursor events over the last year to the troubles that we're seeing now. Very difficult for us to try and attribute cause and effect, but Sinat Chinam was the cause of the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara went on actually to discuss a comparison of the people living during Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni, and those who came back from Bayis Rishon to build Bayis Sheni. We're talking about the generation that returned after the 70 years exile in Bavel, with Ezra and Nehemiah and so on, to rebuild. And the Gemara stated that the second Beis HaMikdash never was subject or privileged to have the presence of the Shechina in the same way as the first Beis HaMikdash. As we know, there were many aspects of the first Beis HaMikdash which were miraculous. Those were not present in the second Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash II was a poor reflection of the first Beis HaMikdash. The Aron HaKodesh, the actual Aron, with the Luchos, the actual Aron wasn't there, had been buried or had been secured away where we don't know. And since the Aron is the centerpiece, so to speak, the place of the Shechina, with the Aron being hidden away, the Shechina wasn't there during Bayis Sheni. And then we brought a story of Reish Lakish, who verbally attacked a Talmud Chacham who had hailed from Bavel and said, the reason that we didn't have a Shechina in the second Beis HaMikdash is because you didn't return. In other words, your ancestors returned in such small numbers from Persia, from Babylon to Eretz Yisrael, that we didn't have the Shechina. If you'd come down in much larger numbers, the second Beis HaMikdash would have been as grand and as impregnable as the first. Not that the first was entirely impregnable, but it would have lasted a lot longer. It might have been a Beis HaMikdash with us today, but because so few, only 22,000 odd Jews came down from Bavel, the second Beis HaMikdash was built on the backs of a very small minority of the Jewish exile, and therefore the schus wasn't there for it to be deserving of the Shechina and even of a long existence. It was subject straight away or very quickly to corruption, and then obviously the occupation by Romans and so forth. So that was as a result of not too many people coming down. This was Reish Lakish accusing essentially the Babylonian exiles for not having come down in big enough numbers. The Gemara went on to say that Rabbi Yochanan disagreed with him. Rabbi Yochanan said it's not because not enough Jews came down from the exile after the 70-year period. The majority remained behind. That wasn't the reason that the second Beis HaMikdash didn't enjoy the Shechina of the first Beis HaMikdash. Says Rabbi Yochanan, there was no way that second Beis HaMikdash would ever have that a level of Kedusha of Beis Mikdash Rishon because of the fact that it was not built by the Jewish people, but essentially built by the Persians. If it had not been for Cyrus and the economic support and the military support, even the small band of Jews that came down wouldn't have come down. And the second Beis HaMikdash was really only constructed due to the goodwill of the Persians. This is what Rabbi Yochanan said. And indeed, he went on to say that even if all the Jews of Babel had come down, together with Ezra and Nehemiah, and it had been a grand re-entry into Eretz Yisrael after 70 years, the second Beis HaMikdash would still not have enjoyed the Shechina because it was built by the Persians. The Beis Mikdash Rishon was built by David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. This was, if you like, it was home built by Jews, and therefore it had a certain level of standing and attracted to the Shechina. But the second Beis HaMikdash would never attract the Shechina because it was essentially financed and supported by the Persian Empire, and that didn't give it the status that it needed. And he went on to prove it. He said, and he quoted this pasuk in Parshas Noach, Yaft Elokim leyefes v'yishkon ba'alei Shem. That Yefes, although Yefet is one of the sons of Noach, as is Shem, but since even though Hashem gave Yaft, he gave beauty to Yefes. Yefes means Greece, it means the Western world nowadays, and the philosophy and the arts and the cultures are very elevated in many ways and are very high up in terms of human achievement. Nevertheless, v'yishken b'ohalei Shem, it is meaningless. That beauty, that glory is meaningless without the Ohalei Shem. It only has any sense when it is within the tents of Shem, Shem being the ancestor of the Jewish people, of Bnei Yisrael. Therefore, if you want the Shechina to dwell, the Yishkon ba'alei Shem, the Shechina shall dwell in Alei Shem. Even though Yefes has a lot of things going for it, the Shechina will only rest in the tents or on the buildings constructed by Shem. In a way, what this pasuk is saying, according to Rabbi Yochanan, is that the Beis HaMikdash is the Ohel, but the Shechina, the Yishkon, the Shechina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, will only be in an Ohel, in the tent, in the Beis HaMikdash constructed by the descendants of Shem, and not by the descendants of Yefes. And the implication over here is that the Persians are part of Yefes. They're descended from the son of Noach, who is Yefet, Shem, Cham, Yafes, and Yafes is the son who is the, if you like, the model of Greece, as we said, Greece, Rome, and the Gemara wants to say over here also Persia. And there'll be no Shechina in Persia, no matter how grand and great their buildings are. The Shechina only rests in buildings which have been constructed and the marshalship of the Jewish people who are Shem. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. And that's why the second Beis HaMikdash was just a poor reflection of the first Beis HaMikdash. It could never be anything other than that. And now we're going to take you, I'm going to take you again to the top of Daf Yud Omad Aleph. We did a little bit of this last week, but we need to go through it again. And we're going to go through it again very quickly this time. because it doesn't make any more sense this week than it made last week, so there's no point in laboring over it. Let's just do the beginning of the top line of Daf Yud Amud Aleph, Tene. Afal gav de yafta lehim leyefes, even though the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave beauty and grace and culture to Yefes, to the descendants of Yefes, Ein hashchina shore ela ba'ohlei shem. The divine presence will never rest anywhere other than in the tents of Shem, in the buildings, in the Beis Hamikdash, which is constructed by Shem. So the Gemara went on to ask this question, Uparsoi min olam deme Yefes ka'asu. The implication is that the Beis Hamikdash Sheni was not going to last because it was built by the Persians. But we seem to be implying that the Persians came from Yefes, and the beauty is in Yefes, but not necessarily the permission to build a Beis Hamikdash. How do we know that Yefes and Persia are identical? Maybe Persia comes from Cham. How do we know which of the sons of Noach Pras is descended from? What's the origin of our assumption here that they came from Yefes? Because the Gemara quotes this posuk, B'nei Yefes, Gomer, Mogog, Modai, V'yovan, V'suval, Umeshach, V'tiros. So I'm just going to share the screen again with you. I shared you this particular screen last time. Where's my share screen gone? Here we are. 1 second. We just moved back to where we were through all the psukim. Okay, so here we have the psukim, which are the key to the topic here. Ve'elu told us b'nei Noach, Shem, Cham, v'Yafes, v'yivoldu lahem bonim achar hamapel. Here were the sons of Noach, and they're Shem, Cham, v'Yafes, and they bore children afterwards. And who were Yefes's children? B'nei Yefes, they were Gomer, Mogog, Modai, Yovon, Sevel, Meshach, Vesiros. And the Gemara went on to explain who all these are, because those names are not necessarily the ones that we associate for countries or racial groups today. Yovon, we see there very clearly. Yovon, that is often taken to be Greece. And so you can see that Greece comes from Yafes. But where do we see from here the Persia? It doesn't say Pras anywhere. So let's go back. I'll just go back to the Gemara over here, because Gemara has to learn these names out in a certain way. So the Gemara says over here, B'nei Yefes, Gog, Magog, Modai, V'Yobon, V'Suval, V'Meshach, V'Siros. Says the Gemara. I'll tell you who all of these are. Gomer, Zer, Germania. So this is Germany. And we explained that Gomer and Germania, as sometimes named in the Gemara. So Gemara is suggesting that Germany, or that part of Gaul, which was Germany at that time, they're descended from Yefes. They're Yefesites. Western culture, German. We have here the Ashkenazic Western world. Let's just go on. Mogog Zukandia. This is not something we understand very well. Mogog, obviously, Gog or Mogog. And Candia seems to be an island which doesn't make sense. So we will just leave this. We don't have to leave various of these names and say we don't really understand them. Modaizu Macedonia, which it isn't. This is wrong. This is the Nusach in our Gemara. If you're reading it in the Gemara, it's not correct. Where it says Modaizu Macedonia, because Macedonia is part of the, if you like, the Greek Empire, or the founding father of Greece, almost to the north. Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. So Modai is Media, is Modai, as we know, the Medes and the Persians. They were neighbors towards the Persian area, and certainly not Greece. Yovon Kamashmo, Yovon is Greece. Tuval Zeis Beisuniaki. We thought that could have been Bithynia. It doesn't matter what these places are very much. We looked at the maps over here, and I magnified this last time. And I took you through some of these countries here as they might have been in the ancient Greek and Roman world in their names. We have Media here. We have Bithynia, for example, which it could be. Meshach zu Musia, and you can see Mysia over here. The Gemara says that could be Meshach. Tyros, and on Tyros, this is where we come to some interest. Doesn't mean corn. Pligibor Rebbe Simoy Rabbonon for Omrila Rebbe Simon. Rabbonon, Chad Amazu based Tariaki. One says it's base teriyaki. And what is base teriyaki? So that could be Turkey today, or it may not be, who knows? V'chad amazu pras, and one says this is pras. And Tani Rav Yosef taught the following, Tiros zu pras. So that's really as far as we need to go for what we wanted to learn out of this. It doesn't say here Pras as being one of the descendants of Yefes, but if we take the Gemara's origins over here, Tiros here is Pras. Tiros is Persia. Why is it referred to as Tiros? I don't know. It's a bit difficult because it's not as if Pras wasn't a known entity, even as a name description, even at the time of the Bible, because we have, Nahar Pras, the Euphrates River. So it's not clear why Tiros should be the name given to Pras, but that's the way that Chazal learn it out. And if this is the case, then we've proven that Pras is indeed, Tiros here, is a descendant of Yefes. And since Pras built the second Beis Hamikdash, essentially was under their leadership that the Jews were able to go down under their protection, then the Beis Hamikdash will never be have the virtue of the Shekhinah, because Yaftalehim the Yefes, beauty may well be due to Yefes and into Persia, but the Yishkan Ba'alei Shem, but the Shekhinah will only ever be in a Beis Hamikdash which is entirely built with the money and the influence and the will of the Jewish people, which was only Beis Hamikdash Rishon and not Beis Hamikdash Sheni. Okay, let me just quit sharing for a moment. We're now on Savta Rama V'Savtacha. It gets more and more messy as we look through these psukim. I apologize. We're doing Gemara as it is over here, and we don't really understand what these places are. This is another quote from Noach. So let me just do the words in the Gemara, and I'll try and show you the posuk again by sharing the screen. The Gemara says now, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines from the top of 10a, Yud Amud Aleph. Savta, Savta sounds like grandmother, doesn't it? Savta, Sabra and Savta. Savta Varama V'Savtacha. Tani Rav Yosef said about these, what? Actually, about Savta and Savtacha, they sound very similar. So Rav Yosef said, Sakistan Gevaisa, the Sakistan Baraisa. Bein Chada Lachada Mea Parsi, Kefa Alpha Parsi, which is as clear as mud, but let's just see what we can make out of that. So I'm going to come back and share screen. We're here. We're on the wrong place here. Let me take you back again. Let me go. I've got to stop sharing. Shared you at Google. Share screen. My eyesight's obviously not very good. Here it is. So we're back again on the map over here. Okay. Here we're talking about the sons of Ham. We're not interested in Persia anymore over here. We're going off on another wild tangent for a few minutes before we come back to Persia. This has nothing to do with the Botei Mikdash, but since we're talking about the psukim in Noach, we're going further into the sons of Noach, Uvanei Ham. And Ham's descendants were Cush, Mitzrayim, Ufut, Canaan. Okay, it's this next pasuk which we just quoted in the Gemara. Uvanei Cush, right? So Cush was one of the sons of Ham, and Cush's descendants, who are obviously also Ham's descendants, were Seva v'Chavila, and that's not being discussed over here in our little Gemara, but these three words are V'Savta, V'Rama, the Savtacha. And then it says, Ubnei Rama Shabbat Adon. Okay, the descendants of Cush, Seba, Havila, Sabta, Rama, and Sabtaka, the descendants of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. So the Gemara wants to know what Sabta and Sabtacha are, these two places in Parshas Noach as the parts of the descendants of Cush by Cham. What are these places? These should be territories now belonging to these descendants. What are they? So Rav Yosef said that they are Sakistan, the outer Sakistan, the inner Sakistan and the outside Sakistan. What is Sakistan? So let's go back up to the map. And I don't know how anyone wants to guess it's here, but they do, and they guess. I think you'll find this an art scroll. It must come from another source. They have absolutely no idea. And they say it could be Scythia, as it was called. That's Ukraine, around here. Very mountainous, and a mountainous area over here, maybe because it's near the Caucasus. So they say it's a mountainous area. And you have over here, Savta and Savtacha are both parts of, you like, Scythia, but there was an outer Scythia, you like, and an inner Scythia. And the outer Scythia, if you imagine it to be a big circle on the map, surrounded as a circle in a Scythia. And inner Scythia, if you like, is a circle within. And the Gemara is merely giving us dimensions over here. And the Gemara is essentially saying that outer Scythia had let's start from inner Scythia. Inner Scythia had a diameter of 800 parsas. A parsa is about 3 to 4 kilometers. So it had a diameter of about 800 parsas. And outer Scythia, which is a circle around it, had a diameter, it seems to me, of 100 more on both sides, which means 1,000 parsas. And you had inner Scythia within outer Scythia. Why do I need to know this? No reason at all. It just seems to be what the Gemara is educating us on outer and inner Scythia. So that's where we are. That's the Gemara here about Savta Savtacha. Just wishes to add some more information for you about the sons of Noach, and in this case, not the sons of Yefes, but the sons of Cham. Okay, okay, let's go on. I'm going to keep this screen up because I hope you're still with me. I know I have an unstable internet, apparently. I think I can still see movement. Okay. If we go on in these psukim, then I'm going to do some psukim that are not actually in the quote of the Gemara next, because the Gemara is skipping psukim and then taking us to a posuk out of context. It's not fun to learn Gemara unless you've actually got the Chumash open. So here's the Chumash. It goes on to say v'chush. Cush, we've just been talking about the children Cush. It said he also bore Nimrod, most famous of the characters here, who heichalios gibor ba'oretz. And it's translated over here, he was the first mighty figure on earth. Actually, there's a whole machlokas what it really means. Who heichal, he began to be a gibor. A gibor could be a warrior. There's a view that a gibor means that he was a great person in a positive way, not necessarily in a negative way. But we always understand Nimrod and the period of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, etc., being a tower, a period of kafira, of complete denial of God, of a rebellion against God. And that's the normally way we understand Nimrod, that he was not a positive character at all, but he was a negative character. And the Pasuk goes on to say, Gibor Tzayid Livnei Hashem. What does that mean? He was a mighty hunter by the grace of God. Al-Kain Ye Omar. For this reason, it would be said, Nimrod Gibor Tzayid Livnei Hashem. And this would be an expression. Someone who was a great hunter, you would say, oh, he's like Nimrod, a mighty hunter by the grace of Hashem. So he was a byword for being a mighty hunter. Was he a mighty hunter? I mean, would he be so well known because he managed to hunt a bear or two? So we don't really know what that means. It could mean that he hunted people rather than, in other words, he was like a highwayman, or he was a person who had captured and captivated large numbers of individuals and refused to let them leave his camp. It's not known exactly what it means. Is it talking about a venison hunter? Is it talking about a man hunter or whatever? We don't really know. Now, this is the posuk which the Gemara is looking at now. The Gemara is only going to be looking to explain psukim which are impossibly difficult for us. So anything which we can translate, isn't going to interest the Gemara now, I'm afraid. Okay, so here we are. But he rachis mamlachto, and a lovely translation, the mainstays of his kingdom. All this translation you can take with a pinch of salt. It helps to have it in here, but it doesn't mean anything. Rachis mamlachto could well mean the most important parts, although it could be it's talking about the first places that he, so to speak, colonized. This Gibor, Nimrod, started to take over and build for himself the first empire, right? Well before the Canaanite Empire and the Phoenician empires, etc. There was Nimrod's mighty empire. And the beginnings of the capitals of his empire were Bavel, Erech, Akkad, Chalner, Eretz Shinar. Again, all of these, or not all of these, some of these are a little bit mysterious. Let's for a moment go back to the Gemara, because the Gemara is going to give us definitions of these places, just in case you don't know what Akkad and Kalnar and Bovel, etc. So let's see what they are. So the Gemara says, Bovel kamashma'a. Bovel is what you think it means. Bovel is Bovel. We know Bovel. It's about the only name we can really stick our finger up near and say, I know what Bovel is. It's Babylon. But let's be careful, because this may not be the Babylon you're thinking about. We'll look at the map in a moment. It's Kamashma. Erech, this second place that Nimrod was based at, was Orichut. That is Orichut. That hasn't helped a lot. For Akkad, Zer Baskar or Bashkar, according to different Girisot. We don't know whether it should be a sin or a shin. Baskar or Bashkar. Kalne, Zer Nofer Ninfi. That doesn't help a lot, does it, really? Let's go back to the map and see if we can identify these places. I'm sure everybody here will be one whole lot better at geography when we finished these shiurim, either that or completely bored. Let's go back up again and we'll see if we can find these places on our magic map. Here's our magic map. Right, so let's start again. The Gemara said Bovel is Bovel. Now you should be looking at this mini map over here, this section. That section is a section here that we have of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Babylonian. Now we're going to be looking at the towns along those rivers, because they're the ones that are mentioned here. We're not talking about countries, we're talking about cities within those countries. 1 second, I'll just try and move something for my set. My screen has just been blocked. Wonderful to know how to use this system. Okay, so let's start again. The Gemara said here that Bovel is Kamashma'ah. Bovel is what you know as Bovel. Well, where's Bovel? You can actually see Bovel. Bovel is here, Babylon, because Bovel here is the city. Bovel can mean two things. It can either mean the country of which Bovel was the main city, which is Babylon. We talk about the countries of Babylon. You know, Babylon was the nation that took over the Bnei Israel and took us into captivity. It wasn't just the city of Babylon, it was the whole territory. Nevertheless, there is still an ancient Babylon, and that would have been one of the capital cities. That's Bovel. So the next thing we have over here is Erech Ze Orichut. So they say that Erech can be found on the map here as Erech. And if you believe the map, here's Erech, not too far from Babylon, along the Euphrates River. Erech, E-R-E-C-H. So we found Erech, that's good. For Akkad, do we know what Akkad is? Zer Bashkar. We don't have Bashkar over here, but according to one view, it is actually Nitzivim, which is right in the north. I find that very strange because it's so far away from this other huddle of towns that we're seeing over here. Nitzivim is right over here, if that's Bashkir. It's funny, Akkad reminds me of the Akkadians, Akkad. I don't know what others aren't looking to see whether it's related to the civilization of Arcadia. I don't know. Finally, we say Kalner, Zenofa Ninfi. Well, they say that it may well be Nippur over here. I don't know how they say it could be, looking at some of the etymology or whatever. So we're seeing that some of these cities that became bases for Nimrod as he built his empire are essentially along the Tigris and the Euphrates, which is not so surprising. Let's go on now. That's that lot. Now we're going to go back and look at the posuk further, which means I'm going to take you further down. Let me just move this along. You probably don't know what I'm moving along, but I am moving something along. And I'm going to make the screen a bit smaller. Okay. So we just did this posuk, but he rashis mamlachto. Nimrod's opening kingdom, his mainstays, if you like, were Bovel, Erech, Akkad, and Kalna, Be'eretz, Shinar. Shinar, by the way, is another word for Bovel. Shinar is mentioned a number of places as Bovel. So the land of Bovel may well be mentioned here in the word Shinar, but the capital of Bovel is here as mentioned as Bovel. Lots of nice little tricks. Okay, now Min ha'oretz hahu yotza Ashur. Now this is a little bit difficult. Let's just read the posuk. From that land, Ashur went forth, Vayiven, and he built, et Nineveh, vet Rechovos Ir, ve'et Kolach. He built 3 places, Nineveh, Rehobot Ir, and Kolach. And of course, the Gemara is going to tell you what these places are in terms of other places that we may not really understand too well. But what is a bit strange is that it's from the lands that we've been talking about, in Babylonia that we just mentioned, Bovel, Erech, etc. This person called Ashur went out. Well, we know Ashur to be a country, Assyria. So it seems from here that we're referring here maybe to some sort of originator, Ashur. There was someone, a mighty warrior called Ashur, and it says by Yiven, and he built. You could read this differently to say that Ashur, the Assyrians, went out. And they built. By Yiven means that Ashur, the nation state of Ashur, built. It's not clear at all whether that's the meaning, or whether it's referring to an individual who he built. And what did he build? Nineveh, Rechovat Ir, and Kolach. And we're now going to be educated as to what they are. So let's go back again to the map. I'm sure all this is becoming clearer and clearer. Let's move that over here. So he built, this Ashur went out and he built Nineveh, etc., etc. Nineveh, says the Gemara, Kamashma'o. It's the town that we know. Nineveh appears, of course, in Sefer Yonah. It's an absolutely great city, huge city, one of the largest cities in the ancient world. The time is Nineveh. It's on the Tigris River. Here's Nineveh. So he built Nineveh. He also built Rehovos Ir, and the Gemara says here, Zu Pras Dameshan. What's Pras Dameshan? Do we have any idea? Okay, so some say that it's a province in the south of Bovel, but it isn't mentioned here. We don't have anything. Some province in the south of Bovel. And Kelach, Zu Pras de Borsif. This is the place called Pras de Borsif, which they want to identify with Borsippa. Now that sounds quite reasonable. Borsippa, Borsif. And it's on the Pras, it's on the river Euphrates. That sounds very good. So Ashur built Pras de Borsif. There'll be an exam afterwards. We'll be asked who built what on the Tigris and Euphrates. And also, the Posuk goes on to say, I'll just go down again to the Posuk, the Esresen, he also built Bein Nineveh or Bein Kelach, he Ir Hagadola, Resen, between Nineveh and Kelach, that is the great city. Well, what does that actually mean? So the Gemara now says, Resen ze aktispun. Let's go back to the map. What is Resen? He also built Resen. Resen is aktispun, Ktesiphon. Over here, we have it on the Tigris, right, near Baghdad. And it says, Hu ha'ir hagdola. So the Gemara says, what does it mean, Hu ha'ir hagdola? Which is the ir hagdola? Is it Resen or is it Nineveh? If we go back to the Pasuk, sorry about all this move here, Resen between Nineveh and Kelach, that's the big city. Was Resen such a big city? So the Gemara goes on to say, Eina Yodei Nineveh or ir hagdola, and Resen or ir hagdola. When I read this Pasuk, I don't know which is the big city being referred to over here. Is it Resen or is it Nineveh? However, I can be educated as to the answer to the question, because in Sefer Yonah, of course, there's a pasuk that says, "K'shehu Omer v'Nineveh hoisa ir gedola le'Elohim mahalach shloshes yomim." The book of Yonah says and uses exactly these words that Nineveh is called Ir Hagadola, the great city, which was 3 days' walk across. That's how large Nineveh was. It was the largest occupied city in the ancient world at the time. So Hevi Omer Nineveh Ir Hagadola. And this teaches us that it is Nineveh being referred to, which is the Ir Hagadola. And here again, we go back to and we see Nineveh. Nineveh is towards the north here on the Tigris River. It has Mosul near here. It's strange, really. Some of the names of these cities, of course, which are in Iraq today, we know because of the wars that the Americans fought, the American-Iraqi wars after Afghanistan, after 9/11, etc. So our geography of Iraq improved because the Americans they took Mosul by storm. What's interesting is Mosul's in the news today. The Americans are telling the Israel how they need to attack Gaza, because Mosul was a great, big inhabited city, which was stormed, and it had to be stormed building by building. The Americans got the Iraqi soldiers to do their dirty work, but they say they planned it in such a way it was taken sector by sector and not by grand slam leveling the whole city at once. And their American advisors are saying this is how we took Mosul. So this is how you can link today's news with this particular piece of Gemara. Very absurd link. Okay. The Gemara goes on to say, I'm sure I've got this anywhere in my psukim, and I don't think we really need it. And they stop sharing. I will stop sharing at this point for a moment. The Gemara goes on to say, and this is an agav, really it's a tangent, because we've been mentioning the names of these places on the map, which we've been trying to identify from Parshas Noach to see where they fitted into our ancient world map. The Gemara is now going to try and identify names of people. And this is very strange. And in fact, this is taken from Shlach Lecha, when the spies walked through the land, and then they met all sorts of characters as they were going through. Who did they spy? And the Gemara goes on to say, V'sham achiman sheishai v'salma yelide anak. The pasuk really says before it, Vayovo at Chevron, that the spies reached Hebron, and there Achiman Sheishai and Salmai, we saw them. They were Yelide Anak. They were the descendants or the children of Ho'anak the giant. It's a difficult pasuk to learn in Shalach Lecha as well. You know, we tend to ignore these psukim. Who is the giant? And why are we mentioning these three by name? But the Gemara now says something about them. Tana, it was taught in a brisa. Achimon. And here the Gemara is going to play with the words, as it obviously often does, but it'll be playing with the names. And by playing with the names, it's going to try and give us some sort of picture of who they were. Achimon. Miyumon Sheba Achim. What is it? Achimon. Miyumon really means the choicest, the most, the best warrior. Miyumon can mean someone who's qualified or trained to do something. The best trained. So Achimon is like of those brothers, Achim, he was the Yumon. He was the best trained of the three brothers. So that's why he was called Achimon. Doesn't tell us a lot more about him, other than he appears to be the top dog amongst these three. Next name was Sheshai. We had Sheshai and Talmai. And here the Gemara's understanding of the words becomes a little bit more far-fetched. Sheshai, Shemesim es ha'oretz bishchis. And it's strange. I think we're trying to use the shins and the sins. There's a double shin here. Playing on the shin, Sheshai, She, Mesim es ha'oretz bishchisus. I can find no other way of interpreting the name in terms of the definition which is following. What does that mean? That he caused Shemesim es ha'oretz, the land on which he walked, if you like, bishchisus, to become all pitted and destroyed. How did he do that? So according to the Medrash, we're talking about the sons of giants. So these sons of giants, these are not big friendly giants, these are nasty giants. So they go clump, clump, clump along the land. And as Sheshai is clumping along the land, he's digging it up with his heel because he's so heavy and he's wearing these hobnail boots. You can imagine him walking along the landscape. That's why it's called Sheshai. And we have a similar explanation on Telmai. Why is he called Telmai? Shemesim is oretz telomim telomim. Telem, telomai, telem is a furrow. If you're pulling along a plow, you're making a telem, you're making a furrow. And as he moved along the ground, because he was so heavy, he was making furrows as he walked along. You could see where he had been because of the deep impression that his weight was planting in the land below him as he walked along. These are Guzmo's exaggerations. I mean, the Gemara is really saying that we have the names of individuals. Why are we given the names of individuals? And what does it mean that there were sons of a giant? So we try and say, what is it in this word, in the notion of being a giant, that fits in with these names? That the sons were also giants. They were giants in such a sense that they almost caused the earth to buckle underneath. The reason I think that the Chazal learned it this way is because we're talking here about the spies. Let's go back to the story itself. The spies come back, at least 10 of them do, with a bad report saying how impossible Eretz Yisrael is to invade, and that there's a foregone conclusion they can't do it. Let's just turn back. There's no way we can make it. So in a sense, what we're seeing here is the impression that the 10 spies have when they see some of the inhabitants of the land. Everything they see makes them shudder. So in their mind, they feel they're grasshoppers compared to some of the people in the land. As we say, we felt like chagovim, we felt like grasshoppers in their eyes. And over here, where they see these large warriors, and to them, they almost expand the picture in their mind. Sometimes, anything small becomes even bigger at a time of crisis. You can't deal even with semi-small, semi-large problems. And they've inflated their views of the danger of the landscape. So the Gemara is actually giving us this impression in the way they translate the names Achimai, Sheshai, and Salmai. Okay. The Gemara gives you a little bit more of an insight here to these names. Let's just go on a little bit further. There's a Dover Acher, another explanation of Achimai, Achiman, Sheshai, V'Salmai. We've just given you interpretations of their names, which give us an impression of what they looked like. But over here, the Gemara says something else. Achiman, why was he called Achiman? It's not actually telling you why it's called Achiman. It's telling you what they've done. It's unusual that this is actually a different perspective completely. It's not an alternative, it's another perspective. The Gemara says, Achimon, this one called Achimon, he built Anot, Bona Anot. Sheshai, Bona Alush, he built Alush, and Talmai, Bona Talbush. Talmai built Talbush. Where are they? We don't know. They may be somewhere eventually Well, these are individuals who are supposed to be in Eretz Canaan at the time because the spies met them. So are these places in Eretz Israel? We don't know these are places in Eretz Israel. Are they in Bavel? But if they're in Bavel, why were these individuals building cities in Bavel, or if you like, being the ancestors of people who built cities in Bavel? Maybe their children eventually moved to other places. Complete unknown. We don't know what Anot is, we don't know what Alush is, we don't know what Talbush is. The Posuk went on to say, though, that they were Yelidei Hanok. We're going back to the actual Posuk. These three individuals were the children of Anok. Why was he called Anok? Well, an Anok means, Anoki means something giant, enormous. So that fits in with a picture we had before that these three sons were also very heavy and large and thunderous in their impact on the ground. But here the Gemara is bringing you another play on words. Gemara loves to bring plays on words over here. It's a rather outlandish one. Yelidei Anak, they were the children of Anak. Why are they called Anak? Not because of giantism necessarily. Shema'anikim hachama b'komosom. Over here, the word Anak isn't really referring, doesn't have the meaning of being very large, but the word Anak can also have an implication for jewelry. It can also be a type of ornament or a type of necklace. So listen to this. These were so large, these people, that they were ma'aniken hachama b'komosom. When they stood up and you looked at them, the sun looked as though it was an ornament around their necks. Can you imagine? Like a large pendant. So you had this giant standing up, and the sun was like a pendant on them, as if to say that the apparent size of the sun seemed to dwarf in relation to the sizes of their chest and their neck. And it was as if they were wearing the sun on as a pendant and chain around their neck. It's about as outlandishly exaggerated as you can make it. Difficult to know why the Gemara needs to say so. They were, and Anak can have the simple connotation of being a giant without having to look at this very subsidiary connotation as being a form of jewelry. Okay, that's what the Gemara wants to say over here. Maybe again, this is the way that the spies almost viewed them in their terror, that they were in their own minds, how big was the fish, the shark you saw? It must have been 100 feet long. It was only 12 feet long, but it frightened me so much. It could have been 100 feet long. So it could be that sort of tall order story that we're seeing over here. Okay, I am pleased to say that we have got through the difficult psukim relating to geography, but we're still not through some strange descriptions in the Gemara, but we're through with the need for this map. Let's go on with the Gemara. Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Omer Rebbe. Here, this week, we come to some interesting, almost contemporary, frightening topics. Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Omer Rebbe, he said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, Asido Romi shetipol biyad pros. Asido Romi. The Roman Empire will one day fall to the Persian Empire. Let's remember over here that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was still living at a time when the Romans, and certainly Rebbe, at the time when the Romans were in control of Judea. Rebbe was a friend of the Judean governor at the time, or the emperor, we don't really understand, Antoninus. The Roman Empire was strongly in position in Canaan in the 2nd, 3rd centuries in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, there were not prospects yet of the Roman Empire coming to an end. But he says, Rome will one day fall. It's not going to be here forever. And who will it fall to? The Persians. This is interesting because the Persians aren't such a big deal anymore. They've lost their enormous standing in the world. The Romans are the big deal. And the Persian Empire is beholden to the Roman Empire. It's essentially only a small reflection of itself. It's essentially where we see Talmud Bavli being put together, and it's may have its certainly has its own powerful strongholds, but it's not a nation that is threatening other empires. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says eventually Rome will fall to Persia. Now, if you wanted to be really hair-raising over here, you could extend Rome as being, as we'll see in a moment, Rome is Edom. Very often, although Edom really isn't Rome, well, this is another question. When we see Edom, that's Rome, that's Esau. Well, Rome and Esau eventually come down to be the Western world, the Christian world. That's how they're seen today. Persia today can be seen as being Iran. So this would be a prophecy that eventually the Western world will fall to Iran and its allies. Don't think about it too much, but that's one way you could see this in modern terms. I'm not going to in any way suggest that that's the meaning of the posuk. But if you want to start becoming, really eschatological, then that's one way you could look at it. How do we know? And for that, he quotes a posuk. He's not using his military prowess, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and Rebbe, to determine why it is the Romans are going to fall to the Persians. He says, look at this posuk in Yirmiyahu, and I will share my screen, as I always do, because psukim are never easy without seeing them. This is from Jeremiah. Second, let's see if I can do that. Okay. So the posuk says, Lochein shimu atzas Hashem, asher yo'atz el Edom. Yirmiyahu is warning Edom. Listen to the plan that God has devised against Edom. Edom being understood as being Rome. You don't understand Edom as being Rome, you get nowhere here. Which is a problem, of course, because at the time of Yirmiyahu, there was no Rome. This is where we get into a twist. Edom was just a province to the east of Eretz Yisrael and on Transjordan. And it did battle against Eretz Yisrael, and it took sides in various battles in the past, but it was not part of Rome in any way. And yet, we know, Rishonim certainly have argued that we are to look somehow into a transfer of the concept of the country of Edom on Transjordan as essentially the progenitor and the ancestor of the Roman Empire we have later on. It doesn't have to be a genetic one, but there's some sort of transfer of what you might say spiritual DNA from Edom, which makes the Western world the followers of Edom. So Hashem has planned this against Edom, and he also has set certain designs against the inhabitants of Teman. I've not highlighted that because that's not part of the posuk that we're interested in. Imlo yischavum tze'iri hatzon. Very difficult. Now, look at the translation over here, which is hilarious. Surely the shepherd boys shall drag them away. Imlo yischavum, Tze'iri Hatzon has been translated as shepherd boys. Tze'iri, the youths, Hatzon, the youths of the sheep, of the flocks. Yischavo means they will overwhelm them, if you like. The shepherd boys shall drag them away, shall overwhelm them. Imlo yosim aleim nevehem, surely the pasture shall be aghast because of them. Complete rubbish as far as the Gemara is going to translate it. It means, if will it not be true that nevehem, their sanctuaries, their great places, their palaces will be made desolate? The translation over here could be, I can see why they've said it, because they're trying to get the shepherd boys into the pastures. But in fact, I don't think these two phrases are necessarily so connected. The Gemara will translate it, and the Gemara does straight away say what this means. So the Gemara actually says, I leave this posuk up, but the Gemara says, Imlo yischavum tiratzon, imlo yosim alehem nevehem. What does that mean? That Siri Hatzon, says the Gemara, well, the Gemara actually doesn't even explain. It means the Gemara understands that the Seiri Hatzon are the Persians. And will immediately ask the question, how do we know it? Because there's no reason for you to believe that Seiri Hatzon mean the Persians. In which case the verse means, will it not happen that the Persians, Yischavum, will overwhelm them? Who? Edom. Edom will be overwhelmed by the Persians. Im lo yosim aleim neveim. Will he not make, in other words, will the Persians not make desolate the palaces and the sanctuaries of the Romans? So this is the proof that, if you like this as a proof, that the Persians will bring about the downfall of the Roman Empire. The Gemara is going to, as I say in a moment, we'll just leave this for a moment. The Gemara is going to identify that Syria had sown as the Persians. So if you don't do so, then the whole verse remains anonymous, and we don't know who is sweeping away the Roman Empire. I've just brought a few more verses in the continuation of Yirmiyahu, because it's really, this is a very powerful statement about the downfall of the Romans, or the downfall of the Western world, or whatever you want to take as your extrapolation. Let's just imagine we're talking here about the original Western world. Mikol Niflom, from the sound of their falling, Rosh Haaretz, the whole earth shall shake. At Sa'aka b'Yam Suf, there will be heard the sound of screaming at the Yam Suf. Nishma Kola, will that be heard? Hine kanesha yale v'yida v'yifros kanofrov al botsra v'yolev giburi edem b'yomahu kalev isham et seira. You take the translation, see, like an eagle he flies up. This will be the Persians if you say that this is the meaning. He soars and spreads his wings against Botsra, and the heart of Edom's warriors in that day shall be like the heart of a woman in travail. So this is the prophecy of Yirmiyahu about the downfall of Edom. And Rebbe and Rabbi Yeshua Levi wish this to be understood as being as a result of the Persian Empire bringing about the Roman Empire's destruction. So the next verse is going to actually prove to us that the Seiri Hadson are the Persians. I'm going to stop over here. I will just say that this is not the final word. In case you go back and you can't sleep for several nights worrying about the fact the Iranians have got one up on the Romans, the Gemara will later say, no, it's the other way around. The Romans have one up against the Persians, and the Western Empire, if you like, will defeat the Iranian Empire. So then you can sleep soundly. If you believe America to be the Western Empire and Iranian Empire to be Iran, then you should be able to sleep soundly. I didn't want to stop the shir while you were in that state of despair. So thank you very much. It's been a rather messy shir today, but that's the nature of the Gemara, where we've been very much involved in name-dropping places. Please God, we'll see you again next week. Everything should be well. Please God, we should be moving in the right direction with the American Empire, the Jewish Empire, and the downfall of our enemies. Yes. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Pleasure.